Have you ever wondered what the smartest, most sophisticated people in the world have to say about happiness? Well, one of the best resources to listen to these kind of people is through TED Talks. So in this video, I'm gonna present you with the 5 most popular TED Talks about happiness and how to accomplish it for yourself. Check it out. The first TED Talk that I can recommend to you is by a guy called Sam Berns. Now, Sam Berns, at the time where he gave his TED Talk, was only a teenager. But he had a very rare disease that made him age a lot quicker. He actually passed away a couple of years ago, but before that, thankfully, he shared with us his 3 rules for living a happy life. And since then, the video has been watched by about 27 million people.
Last year, my mom and her team of scientists published the first successful progeria treatment study. And because of this, I was interviewed on NPR. And John Hamilton asked me the question, what is the most important thing that people should know about you? And my answer was simply that I have a very happy life. Thank you. So even though there are many obstacles in my life, with a lot of them being created by progeria, I don't want people to feel bad for me. I don't think about these obstacles all the time, and I'm able to overcome most of them anyway. So I'm here today to share with you my philosophy for a happy life.
I think we can all learn from Sam to not define our lives by our obstacles and our shortcomings, maybe things that we can't do, but instead focus on all the opportunities we still have simply by being alive. If we can just focus on that, I do believe that we can see the beauty of everything presented to us during the time that we have on this planet. So focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do. Surround yourself with the right kind of people, and then also keep pushing forward no matter what. The next TED Talk that I want to recommend to you if you want to learn more about happiness and how to accomplish it is by Robert Waldinger. Now, Robert Waldinger is a professor from Harvard, and in his speech he summarizes the longest research study that has ever been done on happiness. He says that when you ask young people about what they want to get out of their lives, you usually get answers similar to this.
And over 80% said that a major life goal for them was to get rich. And another 50% of those same young adults said that another major life goal was to become famous.
As it turns out though, and as you might have assumed already, these things are not what ultimately give us happiness. What this now 75-year-old study shows is that much more important than money or fame or success is actually the people in our lives. And having those people in our lives, having these close connections with people that we truly care about, will then lead to us living longer, being healthier, being more determined to stay alive and to work on ourselves to improve our lives. Next on our list of must-see TED Talks about happiness, we have Macaulay Culkin. I'm never really sure how to pronounce my name, but he is one of the top minds when it comes to happiness research.
Where in everyday life, in our normal experience, do we feel really happy?
He has written a book called Flow, and his TED Talk is about the same topic. Flow discusses a state where you are in complete peace with yourself because you are challenged, but you're not overly challenged, yet you also avoid boredom. So it is describing the sweet spot of challenging yourself.
Unfortunately, a lot of people's experience is in apathy. The largest single contributor to that experience is watching television. The next one is being in the bathroom sitting. And then, even though sometimes watching television about 7 to 8% of the time is in flow, but that's when you choose a program you really want to watch and you get feedback from it. So the question we are trying to address, and I'm way over time, is how to put more and more of everyday life in that flow channel.
In terms of work, but also for life in general, it is quite easy to be under-challenged. We're kind of bored because we don't push ourselves to learn new things, develop our skills, and become better. On the other hand, it is totally possible that we are overstimulated, over-challenged, we spread ourselves too thin, and that can lead to anxiety, which is obviously not good either. So according to this TED Talk about flow, what we should be aiming for is this flow state. Because this is where we're challenged, but we're not overwhelmed by the challenge. We know that we're actually capable of handling it. And this is when we experience the most happiness, both for work, but for life as well. So the next time that you feel like either a certain area of your life, or maybe your life in general, is a little bit out of whack, you feel like things are not clicking anymore, take a second and reconsider if maybe you're either too bored or you're feeling too much anxiety about what is going on right now. Then, depending on what you identified as the problem, either boredom or anxiety, either challenge yourself more or bring it down a notch and challenge yourself a little bit less to hit that spot of perfect flow. The fourth TED Talk that I can really recommend about happiness is by a guy called Dan Gilbert. Dan Gilbert is a professor doing research on positive psychology, and he also wrote a book called Stumbling on Happiness, check it out right here, that I can highly recommend to you. Now, in his TED Talk, The Surprising Science of Happiness, he discusses the phenomenon that oftentimes we are very bad at predicting what actually makes us happy. He asked us to picture two scenarios. One is that we win the lottery, so overnight we become multi-millionaires. The other one is that we're in a terrible car accident and we become paraplegic. In which scenario do you think you will be happier overall 1 year from now? Now, I think every rational person would much prefer to become a multi-millionaire overnight than spending the rest of their lives in a wheelchair. But as it turns out, based on actual research on people who had that happen to them, the people who win the lottery are just as happy or unhappy as they were a year ago, and the same goes for the people who end up living in a wheelchair. The reason for that is that we are not very good at actually predicting what brings us happiness and what doesn't.
In fact, a recent study, this almost floors me, a recent study showing how major life traumas affect people suggests that if it happened over 3 months ago with only a few exceptions, it has no impact whatsoever on your happiness.
So just like the previous TED Talks, the TED Talk of Dan Gilbert also emphasizes on the point that money, fame, these things don't really matter in the end. It's not that bad when we lose them because happiness comes from somewhere else. But what place is that exactly? And an attempt to answer that makes Logan LaPlante. He is another teenager who gave a TED Talk about happiness. Seems like a lot of teenagers have a lot of ideas about what will make them happy in the future. His talk has accumulated more than 10 million viewers by now, and in it he outlines how he plans to live a very happy and satisfied life in the future. He says that grown-ups always ask kids, what do you want to be when you're grown up? And they expect answers like being an astronaut or being a researcher, being a football player, whatever it may be. But they don't expect kids to just answer, I want to be happy. I want to live a good and healthy life. But this is exactly what this kid wants.
But what bums me out is to know that a lot of kids today are just wishing to be happy, to be healthy, to be safe, not bullied, and be loved for who they are. So it seems to me when adults say, what do you want to be when you grow up? They just assume that you'll automatically be happy and healthy. But maybe that's not the case. Go to school, go to college, get a job, get married, boom. Then you'll be happy, right? We don't seem to make learning how to be happy and healthy a priority in our schools. It's separate from schools. And for some kids, it doesn't exist at all. But what if we didn't make it separate? What if we based education on the study and practice of being happy and healthy? Because that's what it is, a practice, and a simple practice at that. Education is important, but why is being happy and healthy not considered education? I just don't get it.
Logan, at the time of the TED Talk, was being homeschooled, and he talks about how he created his entire curriculum around the fact that he wants to be as happy as possible. So for example, he's trying to spend as much time outside as he can. Also, knowingly or unknowingly, he is following the advice of aiming for flow in whatever he does. So he creates classes that are educational and that he learns a lot from, but at the same time are challenging and definitely not boring. What I personally really like about that TED Talk is the idea that even as a kid, you already start working towards increasing your overall life happiness. Because that's what we all want to have, ultimately, right? We don't care about money, we don't care about fame, at least we shouldn't, according to some TED Talks. Instead, what we all want is happiness for ourselves and for our loved ones. And that's really all we can hope for. So what I want to leave you with is that you actually contemplate about these questions. What brings you joy? What makes you happy? What path in life can you go down to maximize your overall life satisfaction? There are of course many other resources about that, including videos on this channel. So if you are interested at all in this topic of happiness and well-being, then make sure to subscribe down here for more videos about it. I hope that you also go and actually check out those TED Talks because they are very interesting, highly educational, and I think very beneficial for especially younger people who try to figure out what they want to do with their lives and how they want to approach it in a way that they can maximize their overall life satisfaction. So make sure you check out all of them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, talk to you next time.